Okay, so this series is going to be about creating your first 3D program. As far as how I got here, all you do is you double click on the Unity icon. In the window that opens up, click on the link in the upper right corner that reads New, put in the name of the project, and then at the bottom, click on the link that reads 3D, and this is what it should look like. If it doesn't look like this, it may have accidentally dropped you into the 2D version for some reason, so you might have to try a second time. So this is what a new project looks like. Now, the point of view that you're using, it's important to note, is not what the game looks like. In the 3D version, there's this director or designer's point of view, and you can just freely rotate this around as much as you want. The actual in-game camera is right here, and this little picture-in-a-picture shows you what your game will look like. At least how it starts. And then you have a light, a directional light. So these two objects are the only objects in a new project. So this is called the scene, and it's really the workspace. This is where you can click on objects, move them around, delete them, rotate them all visually. So there's like a tool here for rotation, a tool here to make an object bigger, a tool here just to move it around. Over here on the left is the hierarchy. This is a text list of everything that is in the scene. So just as there's a camera and a directional light, they are listed here in the hierarchy. When you click on one of the objects in the hierarchy, you then see the inspector. The inspector gives you various components. Wherever you see a boldface title, so that is a component, transform. That is a component, light. These components alter what the object does. You can both remove components by right-clicking and choosing remove, or you can click on add component and add various components. The bottom is the asset area. This is where you drag and drop assets from an external folder into the asset area, which then makes it accessible to the project. So let's start with that so you can see how easy that is. We're going to go into a folder that I created for this project, and you can see there's only one asset in there. It says floor tile. This is just simply a PNG. There's absolutely nothing special about it. So let's drag and drop that into our scene. Or to be more precisely, we dragged it into the asset area, which will allow us to use it in the scene. It's not actually in the scene yet. Now, there is one notable attribute about this image. If you look over here on the right, you can see how it's supposed to look like a couple boards. This board is cut off. That's intentional because the left and the right side will match up, which allows you to take this tile and use it over and over again seamlessly. So let's go ahead and create our first object. So click on Game Object, 3D Object, and we'll choose a plane. There's some very important attributes to know about a plane. It is only two-dimensional. So there are no edges in which a tile or a texture or a color is being repeated. It is only being repeated in the 2D image that you see. Likewise, it is only, if you flip this over, you will not see the tile on the other side. So it's kind of like a mirror in an interrogation room. On one side, if you're in the interrogation room, you see a mirror. On the other side, you can actually see through the mirror. So for instance, if I was to take this, and this is just a rotational tool I clicked on, and I rotate this, suddenly see how you don't see white? That's because you can see through the other side. So this truly is a two-dimensional object. So this is going to be the floor. So if you click on an object, and click again, just like you're doing in Windows, you could rename it. We're going to call it floor. Now, as far as to give an object characteristics such as color or to make it look like it's wood or stone or metal, there's a couple different ways to go about it. One, you can manually create a material, which is what we're going to show you. Conversely, you might actually commission people to make materials for you. So you might commission someone to draw the images for you. You'd reach out to, like, say, an artist or someone like that, or you can go to the asset store here and purchase assets. So let's create our own material to begin with. Now, when you create a material, there's two ways to do it. You can take an image, drag and drop it onto an object, and it will by default create a material. You can also right-click, choose Create, and choose Create Material. So you can do it either way. There really isn't any difference that I'm aware of. So go ahead, take the image, drag and drop it right on to the floor. And it automatically applies it. See how a folder was created that says Materials? If you open that up, you now have the material that is on the floor. So if you change this, this will change. You can see the image of the boards are right there. So what we're going to do is do some tiling. So here, we're going to change this to, say, 8. And we're going to change this to 8. So the X and the Y tiling. So suddenly it looks much better. The alignment is actually off ever so slightly. I noticed that when you zoom in, and it's not because of this, it's because of the source image itself. I mentioned how the left and right lines up. I didn't quite get it perfect, so you might notice that. So I just want you to know it's not a programming glitch. It's a human glitch, me. Now you can do a few other things. I don't want to get too much into this because creating materials in itself could be an entire tutorial. But here's some common ones, like there's metallic if you want this to look more metal. If you look down here, you can also see some of the changes it would make. It changes here too, but here you can also see the light highlight. So let's put that back down to 0. You can also change the smoothness, so you'll see how this changes. You won't get this glare here will disappear if I take out the smoothness. Conversely, I can put the smoothness way up, and you can actually see like the gleam. So we might do this if, say, it's like a really shiny tile, like a bathroom tile or something like that. So we'll just bring it back to where it was at, I believe it was 0.5. So far, so good. Now, the camera, if you click on it, starts at 0, 1, -10. There's really nothing magical about those numbers. Just so we have a point of reference, we're going to change that. And you can either click on the Z to move it along the Z axis, or you can just come up here and manually change it. Let's put this at, like, say, 4. Now, there's a problem because now the floor no longer shows. So more than likely, what we're going to do is we have to make the floor bigger. Now, keep in mind, if you're making the object bigger, then the amount of tiles needs to increase as well. So let's actually drop the camera a little bit because that's probably a little bit too high. We'll drop it to 3. And we still can't see the floor, but that's fine. Oh, and by the way, the floor is at 0, 0, 0. Generally, when you create a new object, that's what it defaults to. Not always, so keep an eye on that. So we're going to scale this. So again, you can either use this tool up here, or you can just manually change the scale. Now, there's only 2 directions. It has X, and it has Z. So it has left and right, and then towards and away from the camera. Because, as I said, it's a plane, so there's no depth to it. So now let's go ahead and click on the camera again. So now we can see the floor again. Now, what we're going to do, we're actually going to make that slightly bigger. Let's make it 3 by 3. There. And by the way, when you see me zooming in and out like that, that's just me using the scroll wheel. So now you actually have a floor that has boards on it. We will probably have to change the tiling. As I mentioned, you can just click on the material and you can just change the tile. We'll see how it looks when it runs. Now, as far as running a program, that's just hitting the play button up here. So, this is what it looked like to start with. So nothing really special, but it's a start. So let's create some walls. So game object, 3D object, plane, we'll rename this wall, and it needs to be rotated. So you can take the rotation tool, and like I said, only one side has the image, the other side is transparent. So let's rotate it towards us. And up here you can see it rotated on the x-axis. So let's just change it to a full 90 degrees. And yes, a little bit of what you had in geometry will come in handy when you're talking geometry and trigonometry, as you're talking about angles and rotation. Nothing really heavy, at least not for this project. Now just click on the move, the transform tool, and you could just move it. And again, when you move it, you can see the numbers up here change. So just going to move it like that. And now we need to change its size. So let's go ahead and make it 3. And it should be exactly the same size because we said it started with the same default primitive object. We started with a 3D plane. I don't think we're going to need to do 3 vertically though. Let's just do 2, unless it's going to be a really high ceiling room, but I'm not certain if you're going to give you the ability to look up. Now what you do is you can just copy this. So right click, copy, paste, and then you can just rotate this. Now this is going to look a little weird because this is the facing. So if I rotate it away from us, you won't see it. And so it looks like you've made a mistake. But again, keep in mind, it's one-sided only. So it looks like that's a -90. Now we just need to line it up. So to line it up, probably what we will do is we'll put the Z at 0, because we said this was centered at 0. This is of the same width, so centering at 0 should be correct. So let's click on the main camera, and we're just going to briefly rotate it towards that wall and see if it looks right. And if you're looking at the picture in the picture, it looks good. So now you just continue. Take that wall, copy, paste, push it over, and now you have to do the opposite. You have to rotate it towards us. So again, rotate it towards us, and now so you can see it's facing. And so, unsurprisingly, it's positive 90. So just as the wall here is -90, since this one's parallel to it, it's going to be positive 90 because it rotated 180 degrees. So like I said, some of that geometry and trigonometry will come in handy. For the fourth wall, though, this one's going to be done a little bit differently because we want a doorway for the person to escape out of. So we can't just use a plane because there is no passageway in it. So we have to manually sculpt a wall with a passageway in the middle of it. Now, you can certainly buy assets like that. You certainly can make assets like that externally. We're just going to keep doing this internally, though. So 3D object, and this time we're going to use a cube. Going to slide this over. Okay, you could see it disappear under the floor. So even without looking at the numbers, you can tell it's lined up almost right. Not to mention, since this is a doorway, you need thickness. And like we said, this doesn't have, the planes don't have thickness. So you really need to use, can't really use a 2D plane for this. Unless you're just kind of a door that you click on and doesn't open and then it says you win kind of thing. But here we'll probably actually have the door swing open. So let's make this, as far as scale, let's make this almost 4. Let's see how 8 looks. And now for vertical, let's make this 16. see how that looks. Let's click on main cam. That looks okay because you can't see above the doorway. So let's click on that. We'll copy it. We'll paste it. We'll slide that over with the red arrow, so along the x-axis. And that doorway is going to be a little bit too big. So let's make this 9. Make this 9. And then we'll reevaluate. Still a little bit big. Make this 11. And I'm not going by large increments because since the increase is being done to both of them, it makes you have a cumulative change. Okay, I think that's going to be right. There we go. All right, so for now, we're not going to put a door there because when we put the door there, I'm going to get into functionality of how to make the door rotate properly on the hinges and things like that. So for now, that creates our room. And I think that's about it for the first lesson. So it introduces the Unity UI, and it introduces the 3D environment and how you can create the environments right within Unity itself. But more than likely for a professional project, you would probably actually use external 3D modelers, or you might commission people and they use external 3D modelers. Okay, so we'll pick it up in the next video.